were you aware at the time together that, like, you know, this is still going to keep working with the two of us because we're evolving at the same pace? Or was it just, we're just existing in the world and this is how characters, this is what happens to characters?
I always thought the best version, I mean, even though when I was more of the traditional Undertaker and he was Kane, worked great. But for me, my favorite part was when I was the American Badass. And he was still pretty much Kane in the mask. Because it just, I don't know, it made it even more real to me. Like, because you know how the world of WWE goes. Like, sometimes you'll have some kind of split variation and creative changes in a whole nother way. And although I was something completely different from when the two characters come together, we were still linked because we were brothers. And it was, I mentioned it in the doc. It's we did this pre-tape, and I don't even think we were doing anything together at the time. But there's a pre-tape that we did, and I think I was working with Lesnar the first when he came in the first time, and he had broke my arm or something. I don't remember the setup exactly, but like, I'm sitting in this locker, and I don't know if I'd just gotten my ass kicked or whatnot, and then something has happened to Kane in the show, and he comes into the dressing room, right, and he sits down next to me, and this, I think, is the first time they'd seen us together in a while, and Kane, he just turns to me, he goes, "Well,
how was your week?"
It's just, it's one of the funniest. I don't know. It was, maybe nobody else may see it that way. I just, when somebody, they gave me that, I was like, that is so funny and so good.
Yeah.
And it's worth going back and looking at, because I just thought it was really, really cool, and just one of them little nuggets of history there that I really stand out. I mean, obviously with all the matches and the angle, but that's one of the things that really made me smile when I look back and is doing that pre-tape.
I think it's just that the humanizing factor that you were talking about, and the fact that in the end, the guys are brothers, no matter what incarnation or whatever, they might be. And, yeah, you can actually see Undertaker and Kane doing that, just, for a moment, getting away from the fireballs and the lightning, like you said, with the American Badass, made it a little easier. And I think at that point too, my character had evolved somewhat. I was talking, and of course I was talking, so it wasn't quite the mystery that you had early on. And that's the thing about longevity in WWE is you have to be able for your character to adapt and reinvent itself. And I think through all that, though, there's always a common thread with, because of the strong, story with Undertaker and Kane, there's always been that common thread that no matter, if Kane wore a mask, didn't wear a mask, whatever, Undertaker was always around someplace. And especially I think it's stronger on my end, but same with Taker. It never surprised people if Undertaker or Kane were to pop up in the other storylines or whatever, right?
Yeah, and the fact too that I think, and Undertaker, you just said it really well, that when the American Badass was with Kane, it was that linking thing. It was one of the elements that showed you this is an evolution of a character, not a new character. This is still,
right.
Still brothers, and that's why I think that you're right, that when you see Kane, you think about the Undertaker and the Undertaker Kane, regardless of what form those characters are in, because both of those characters just evolve and evolve and evolve. I think it's poetic. I mean, I think you've told stories, Taker, about not necessarily wanting to go back to being the dead man, but the idea that, 6 years later, first, Kane buries you, which seemed unnecessary to me, but
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
They set me on fire once. I mean, he deserved it.
I thought we buried the hatchet.